The inspiration for this piece came from an emotional and physical state that I've been in for probably this whole senior year as I'm getting ready to graduate and discovering who I am and who I'm going to be after Luther and in this world. Just kind of in this state that I think a lot of seniors and a lot of people are in that state of what's next, like who am I, what is my purpose here at this school, in this country, in the world as a whole. So I have all of this going through my mind, and dancing through the 4 phases in our movement fundamentals 3, practicing vocabulary and intention, has been so powerful for me because I keep coming to this awareness of my spine. And there was this moment of epiphany for me, home for a break. One of my physicians pointed out to me that they noticed this tightness in my back, and I have a very intuitive physician, and she said to me, there's this tightness in your spine and you're figuring out what's yours and what's not yours. You're figuring out who you are in this world. And I'm like, oh my gosh, all of this movement research I've been doing in my dance classes here at Luther, like, it was this moment of validation. So I was able to take that back and apply it to my creative process. So in making this piece that's called Stand, I wanted to investigate the head and tail connection, because your spine goes all the way up to your ear level. If you put your fingers in your ear here and tilt forward and backward, they don't move because that's the pivot point. So it's all the way from like this part of your head down to your tailbone. So it's this beautiful fluid piece of your structure that moves you and makes you stand in this world. And there's this philosophy that this head-tail connection of your spine is in conversation with how you feel in this world. I mean, you've seen people nervous, like slumped over like this. Our big CEO executives, they sit at their desk and they're like open, and it's all this body language in the spine, but you communicate it to others, but you're also communicating it to your own body. So the theory behind this is that by getting myself to move in new ways, I am diving into my own source material in my body and figuring out who I am and how I stand. And I really wanted to invite others into this piece, so they could experience this as well and take from it what they may, and hopefully just have that with them in their daily experience, an awareness of the motility of their spine. So in this piece, there will be a bunch of prompts with imagery that I've created, and dancers who haven't even seen the prompts yet will just be invited to read them and interpret that and move with me in the stage outside. So I think imagery is a very powerful tool for evoking movement and still giving a place of creativity. So this is one of them. The brilliant ball of energy at your core moves you. Let me find another one. This one just says undulate, like waves. So, yeah.
The inspiration for this dance was pretty much earlier this semester. I had a pretty bad concussion. And through all the doctor visits I had, the hardest thing to hear was definitely the fact that I couldn't dance. And for a while, this was something really hard to take in, just because dance has always been my safe haven and just my escape from the world. And I was really pretty down about it until I realized that my definition of dance and the definition of dance to the doctor were different. The doctor's definition of dance was pretty much just what you see on TV, what media portrays dance as. And dance to me is just moving any parts of your body in a way that feels good with yourself and within. And so once I realized that, and for this project, I was like, okay, well, I can't really dance when I was starting to create it. So I played with that restriction. And so for the dance, the whole time, my head is anchored to the ground. And I have two others with me who are playing with other restrictions. One is covering her eyes the whole time to see how she can still move and dance when she's blind. And the other actually injured her foot earlier this year, so she can't pivot or turn any directions on her right foot. In order to create this dance, I kind of followed a directography, which is similar to what Jane Hawley did for Who Do You Trust? So it's just a series of steps, like move your right foot, move your left foot, make a noise, slap the ground, that kind of stuff. And if you can't do it, you still do what you can and emphasize the fact that you can't do it, and to show that you can still dance even with restrictions.
So my piece is kind of based off these videos that I've been taking of myself over the past 2 semesters. So I've just been gathering all of this material of myself and how I dance. So it's a whole bunch of videos, just material just that I can source back to when I need them. And considering my kind of shorter time frame to make this piece, I thought, this is a great thing that I can use, so I have all of these things of, ways that I move, so I'm not training my body in a way that I see someone else moving, I'm just doing it how I do it, And I started with, I wanted it to be about 7 minutes long, and there was music that we heard in class Wednesday that I really liked, that I wanted to kind of use as material. So I created a playlist of that music, and I found a whole bunch of quotes from dancers, from a dictionary, from an author, regarding dance, and things that really resonated with me, and I'm using those to initiate some of my movement, and they're kind of interspersed throughout my piece.
To move one's body rhythmically.
And there's a quote from me at the end as well to kind of tie it all together. So I used that kind of 7.5 minute playlist to gauge how to space out everything and how to phrase, using the music to help phrase the movement, and it's just very much this interplay of everything just weaving all together that way.
So I think I've been sourcing material for this piece for a really long time, maybe since I started at Luther. I just find myself going back to the patterns of finding balance when I improvise, challenging myself. How far can I balance? How much can I push myself? How can I move my body and still be balancing? And so it's kind of this pathway I always go back to. And so I think that really fed into this piece. So I just remember sitting in class one day and we were talking about these final pieces and I had no idea what I wanted to do. And then I had this image of a still statuesque person in the middle of the atrium while everyone moves around it, going to Sunnyside and just being busy around it. And I just really had this image of viewing from above a still person just balancing in the middle of all of that chaos. And I didn't know what it meant at the time. And then eventually I started thinking about balance and how balance can be used as many different definitions. Balance can be body balance, balance can be balance in your day, and balance can be rest. And then how do we rest, and why don't we give ourselves more time to rest? And so I started playing with the idea of rest as something that has value, and something that can be traded as a commodity. So we trade our time to rest and our time to balance for time to do homework, time to spend with friends, with family, time to work, time to work out, and not necessarily recognizing that rest and balance is just as important as doing homework, and things like that, and just wondering why that is viewed as inferior to some of these other aspects of our lives. And so I decided to craft a piece in which I'm balancing, and that is my score. I'm just balancing. But I decided to really challenge myself by seeing if I could do it for an hour. So my piece is a little crazy. It's an hour long. I will be And I specifically chose the setting of Ultra Mega Mega at the CFA, which is a very busy event, and there's people looking at art, people going to pieces, and I wanted to have in the atrium amidst all of that busyness so that I could just be another art installment. I could be another kind of part of the texture of that experience, just to maybe walk by and then you don't see it, and then you go back and someone's been balancing here this entire time. And so just to see if I can do that for myself, to see if I can balance for that long, to see if it's hard, to see if it becomes easier as time goes on, or if it just stays hard the entire time, wondering when it becomes meditation and when it's just a practice, and becomes a practice versus just a task. Basically what inspired me for this whole dance was the fact that over this past J-term, I went to San Diego to do a social work internship, and that is where I was at a refugee and immigrant organization called Nile Sisters Development Initiative, and I did a lot of work with the health community organizer there to plan an event on female genital cutting within refugee and immigrant communities, and just to spread awareness and show the prevalence of that. So what I did a lot that whole month was just read and read and read and read and read about female genital cutting in these refugee and immigrant communities. I learned a lot about how prevalent it still is, like even within the US, which was something I was super surprised about. And I also was meeting consistently with a separate social worker to kind of get me a different social work perspective on my internship. And one idea that he gave me was using this experience to maybe create a dance to combine my majors, which I thought was an awesome idea. So then when Movement Fundamentals 3 started, and then we kind of had this whole semester to explore and create and do awesome things, I was trying to decide what I should do my final project on, and I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to create a dance based off my J-term experience. So I took that and I ran with it. I found this really awesome poem over J-term written by a Somali woman who basically explained her experience with female genital cutting, which I thought was really powerful, and basically just went from there to be inspired and create movement. And yeah, it's been a really fun experience, and I'm excited to share it.
Well, hi, my name is Madeline Shervold. I'm a sophomore at Luther College, and I'm an art major, and much of my work two-dimensionally explores the relationship between humans and the environment, but I'm also really intrigued by performance art and more interactive ways of communicating ideas, which is why I have a strong interest in dance, particularly the dance program here at Luther. And so in this dance, I was exploring the human relationship to plastic and the human relationship to the man-made materials that we create in contrast to nature, which is why, with the lighting design that it has like green lighting in it, sort of to give it sort of a more nature feel, but also kind of an alien feel as well. It's sort of kind of haunting imagery that I was trying to convey, and sort of the movement exploration that I was doing was probably closer to more grid-like movements, kind of reflecting a more technology-centered world, and also centered around a plastic bag, which is something that's kind of incorporated into our everyday lives, yet we don't really realize it, hence a dress made completely out of plastic. I was also interested in using sort of recycled materials for this project as well. And so exploring kind of the layers of the human-plastic relationship and also in the environment as well. Sort of taking this sort of relation worship type feel to a more extreme and exaggeration to intentionally shock people in a way and draw attention to our obsession with plastic.
So this piece started because there's a spoken word poem that I really like called To This Day. And so I started by just kind of listening to that pretty much on repeat for a couple days. And then I decided to pick and choose kind of sections that I wanted for a certain narrative that I wanted to tell. And I picked a space that was outside because I just really like being outside and I wanted to be different. And so I just started working in the space and trying to put movement to words, but also trying to keep this balance between not letting the movement overpower the words and not letting the words overpower the movement. So it's been really interesting to be like in an outside space and to kind of challenge myself, because I also memorized the words to the poem and I will be speaking them with the dance. So it was a really interesting process for me, and to try and kind of keep the same narrative throughout the piece. So it's kind of about bullying and empowerment and being yourself and finding yourself in this giant world. So yeah, another reason that I picked the outside space is because it's on concrete, which is very different than the wood floor in the studio. And I'm kind of a turner by nature, and so by picking concrete and bare feet kind of limits me to not turning. So it was like another limitation that I decided to put on myself. I also wanted to make it a longer solo, so I'm aiming for about 8 minutes, where like typical dance solos normally are like 3 minutes max.